NBC's Josh Letterman is reporting from the courthouse in London. Also with us, Jamil Jaffer, founder and executive director for the National Security Institute. Great to have both of you here. Josh, so if the judges rule against him, Assange will have exhausted his options for appeal in the UK. So tell us what happened in court today and what we're expecting next.
Well, Chris, the hearing is now wrapped up, and the judges could have issued their ruling on the spot, but instead they said they're going to take some time before making their decision about whether Assange will be extradited immediately or get a full appeal. But, you know, it was so interesting in court today. You mentioned those 17 espionage charges and one computer hacking charge against Assange. The lawyers for the U.S. made clear in court today they plan to focus on the latter, on the computer hacking, because Assange's legal team has tried to argue that what he did in exposing alleged wrongdoing by the U.S. government is legitimate journalism. The U.S. attorneys plan to make the case and have been making the case that the tactics that he used to do it in hacking into computers, trying to crack passwords of people who didn't have access to the information they obtained, stealing massive troves of classified documents is totally different than what legitimate journalists do every day. And so you see the legal team for the U.S. Trying to convince the court that this is not about the content of what Assange stole and exposed. It is about the tactics that he used in hopes that that will be viewed by the court here in London as clear-cut evidence of criminality justifying his extradition. Now, the judges made clear that they are going to give the parties in this case up until March 4th to make any additional written submissions to the court. And so at that point, that is the earliest that we could see a decision about whether or not Assange will be immediately put on a plane to face those 18 counts in the U.S. or will instead have one more chance to try to appeal that extradition here in the United Kingdom, Chris.
Thank you, Josh. We appreciate it. Okay, Jamil, you're both a national security expert and an attorney. How compelling do you find this case for extradition?
Well, look, I think Josh is exactly right. The argument that Julian Assange is going to make is that he was a journalist. But the fact of the matter is that Julian Assange is no journalist. He doesn't comply with standard journalistic ethics. He doesn't take steps to protect sources and methods and the like. In particular, you know, the revelations that he put out there without taking any precautions put other journalists, legitimate journalists and human rights activists at significant risk in Afghanistan and around the globe. So this idea that somehow Julian Assange is anything more than a hacker and a leaker is simply not true. He's not a journalist. The U.S. government has good, strong arguments. I think the British government, having already decided to extradite him, the court's likely to agree, and he'll be coming to the United States here in the near future to face justice.
His wife and his lawyers have been comparing him to Alexei Navalny. They say, like Navalny, imprisoned for telling the truth, facing the possibility of death because of it. His wife says she fears he will die if he's extradited. What do you make of that comparison?
Well, given that Julian Assange is essentially a shill for the Russian government, it's almost the opposite of being like Alexei Navalny. The idea that he's anything like a legitimate Russian opposition leader is simply untrue. No doubt that Julian Assange's supporters are going to make the argument he revealed embarrassing information about the Afghanistan war. That is certainly true. He also revealed tremendous amounts of information that have nothing to do with legitimate issues in the media, sources and methods of intelligence collection and the like, and in particular put thousands of people's lives at risk in Afghanistan and elsewhere. So this idea somehow that Julian Assange is a whistleblower or anything more than what he is, which is an individual who suborns other people, encourages other people to hack into systems, steal classified information, then knowingly publishes it, that's just not who he is, unfortunately.
So assuming you're right, and a lot of people agree with you, and he is extradited to the United States, then what?
Well, then he gets a trial before a federal judge and a federal jury. And so he'll get a trial before his peers. His lawyers will certainly argue that his actions were protected by the First Amendment and the like. Open question whether a foreigner located overseas has any rights under the First Amendment. But he'll probably be afforded those rights once he's in a U.S. courtroom. And then we'll see how that goes. They'll almost certainly go to the courts of appeal and the Supreme Court with these arguments. But at the end of the day, I think he's likely not to prevail and ultimately will face justice in a U.S. court and then maybe in a U.S. prison. The Australians have argued he should serve his prison sentence, if given one, in Australia. So we'll see how that plays out as well.
Jamil Jaffer, thank you so much.